Hey everyone, welcome back to We Got Issues. Each episode is going to feature a new local artist talking about their work and making sure that you know what's out there. And today I am pleased to welcome Dirk Tiede to our show. Dirk, welcome, man. How are you?
Thanks for having me. This has been great.
Cool. Well, hey, thank you for coming on board. And my first question is, what roped you into comics? What inspired you?
Wow. Well, I know I've been reading comics about as long as I can remember. Reading the newspaper, Calvin and Hobbes, Peanuts, that sort of thing. But what really got me into reading comics regularly was an interest in role-playing, which was totally inspired. I have these multiple inspiration points. Bear with me.
Oh, sure.
It all started with all those Japanese animated shows in the 80s, like Robotech and Voltron and Speed Racer. But it was Robotech that was the big one. It was like this soap opera. It was this space soap opera with giant robots. I mean... My sixth grade mind could not handle it. It was that great. And I loved it, and it went away. And then when I was in middle school, I discovered there's a role-playing game based on it. And I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. We can pilot giant robots. And we did that for a little while, and then we realized that the same guys who did that did the Ninja Turtles game. And we were like, ooh, we could do like mutant animals and stuff. And then I was like, oh, well, Ninja Turtles is kind of cool. And then I started reading Eastman and Laird and the original Turtles comics. And next thing I know, I was drawing my characters in comic form. And my friend was like, have you read the X-Men? You need to read the X-Men. And that was it. I was done.
At what point in time did you decide that you were going to really try to pursue this as best you could?
Well, I hit it really hard when I was in high school. I really caught the bug. Mm-hmm. I drew something like 10 issues worth of comics between sophomore year and senior year of high school. And it ended up getting me a scholarship to a university into a commercial art program. Unfortunately, after graduated, I went to my first comic convention. I was very excited. I was like, I have my portfolio. I'm going to take it around everywhere. And this was the height of the 90s boom. Mm-hmm. You know, like Image was the biggest thing. And, you know, everybody was like, there was like Malibu Comics and there was like Valiant Comics and all these things. And it was, you know, the height. It was at the, you know, before the bubble burst. And I took my portfolio around and I was like, I'm gonna totally get a job. It's gonna be great. And I totally got shut down. And I remember, you know, it hurt. And, you know, that was like my first taste of rejection, which, you know, any comic artist knows that you gotta learn to deal with that. But it shut me down for a while, and I went off to school and I got a degree in commercial art, and I learned to do animation and computer stuff and all that. I didn't draw any comics at all, but I kept role-playing. So I kept having all these characters in my head, which, you know, could have been terrible, but when I got out of school, I went off and got a job. I was living in Chicago, and I still had these stories. And then I was living in this awesome city, and next thing I knew, I was drawing a comic. And that's the comic that I'm still doing today. Cool.
And now the comic that you're doing is Paradigm Shift.
That's right.
Right, and it's an online comic. And how long has it been running for?
Well, I first posted the first 10 pages in the spring of 1999, so it's been running for over 11 years.
Wow, that's awesome.
It's you know, it had sort of on and off at first, but it's been going strong since 2005 or so. I've been pretty much posting regularly on it. So it's and now I've got 3 books out.
That's fantastic. And you like hear from your fans? People come to you like, oh my God, we love this. This is great.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I go to shows all over the country, and I have fans who'll come up and, you know, they really love it. They'll pick up the books. I'll draw things for them.
Cool.
It's great. And then of course, this being the internet in 21st century, I've got I've got the comic on a blog, so you can post comments, and so I keep a regular discussion going with my viewers on there as well. So it's really fantastic. You know, I look at all these young kids coming up in the comics today, and who can post all their stuff online even when they're in high school. And like, boy, I wish I had that when I was in high school. Probably would have stuck with it, instead of putting it off to the side and coming back to it. Then again, I did have a lot of growth because I did that, but I was relearning the wheel when I came back. And so I think nowadays it's a lot easier to keep your foot in if you're just getting started.
Now, for those who don't know, you're not only drawing it, but you're writing the story as well. Is it kind of hard keeping that balance between the writer and the artist, and also you're promoting yourself as well? So I imagine this is a lot going on.
It's a juggling act.
Sure.
It is. When I'm posting online, I try to keep a regular schedule, so you got to keep the artwork coming. But if you don't have a script, you're doomed. And I kind of came at it as an artist first and a writer second, but I've sort of learned the craft as I've gone. Now I've got a working system now. I sort of plot in advance, and then I script as far as I can until I start running out of time when the updates start breathing down my neck, and then I go and take what I have and try to get as much done, and then get back to the writing once I've built up a little at a time.
Is it hard to pace yourself sometimes? Where, I mean, are you like drawing one thing, but in your mind, I can't wait to get to this part and tell this part of the story? And
absolutely, absolutely. And mine does not sit still. I'll be working on a scene, and I'll be like, there's a lot of talking in this scene, but I've got this action sequence coming up. I can't wait. It's going to be awesome. And pretty much like most of my third book was like that, where like it was all about those last couple of scenes. Like I could not wait to draw them, and like the entire book, and it took me 3 years to get there, but I made it. I made it. And along the way, I try not to make things too tightly scripted. Basically, I go with an outline, so I know where everything's going, so I have my plot. But I leave room for inspiration, so I don't even script a few scenes ahead, because there are things that might come to mind that I hadn't thought of when I was writing the outline, that can add some real depth to the story that I wouldn't have otherwise have thought of at the time when I was writing it initially.
Cool.
And so if you were to look at the outline of those 3 books, they don't quite match up with what's in the final, but I feel the final is much, much stronger for it.
Cool. Do you ever kind of get scared that you're going to run out of ideas at some point? They're just kind of like putting train tracks before the train?
I was starting to feel that when I was getting towards the end of my latest book, but it turned out that that really wasn't my problem. It was just I had been working on it for 3 years, and I was like, can't wait to be done. But the instant I put the last line down on the last page, like this huge explosions of ideas just started coming out for the next story, and it would just sort of been waiting in the wings. So it's basically the same thing as like writer's block. It's something that sometimes you don't have ideas and you just have to wait it out and go do other things. And the nice thing about doing a graphic novel is that you can go back and forth between the writing and the art.
Sure.
And so when you're not feeling inspired for one, you might feel inspired for the other. But then, of course, there's also the business aspect, which eats up its own amount of time, too. So there are plenty of things to keep me busy throughout the day, from week to week and year to year.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you're extremely busy. But now, one thing I wanted to talk about your comic was, there's a lot of elements going on to it. It's like a cop drama, but there's like a paranormal twist to it too. Like, so what kind of like what were you inspired by to tell such a unique story like this?
Well, it came from a lot of different points. The initial basis was these 2 characters, and one of them, I was inspired by like X-Men and stuff with, here's a character and they develop powers. Well, what do you do with that? And then, of course, I had this character, and she ends up developing these sort of werewolf powers, which, if you read any werewolf stories or watch any great werewolf movies, these never can end well. And I also had a love of cop dramas, cop stories. I watched Law and Order constantly when I was in high school, and I came to love like 80s buddy cop movies like Lethal Weapon and Running Scared, and I love Running Scared. That one's just awesome. But I also was a big fan of the X-Files, and so I loved that paranormal element. So you take the idea of someone developing powers, and then you kind of give it this horror element with the whole, it's a werewolf thing, so then you get this whole werewolf horror aspect, and then bring in the like paranormal cop investigation aspect on top of it, and you end up with a very multi-layered story, which can go in a lot of different directions. And so I'm trying to take it in as many directions as possible. And in some ways, the name Paradigm Shift is all about the fact that I'm changing genres throughout the story. It starts as one thing, and then it turns into something else, and then it turns into something else.
That's cool. So when your fans come up to you, like, what's the biggest thing that they take away from your comic? Like, what is it do you think that they like enjoy about?
Oh, I'm pretty sure they love my main character, Kate.
Yeah.
Who's just really, really kick-ass. She's a really strong character, but I try to show her in a lot of different ways. Like, she's a strong character, but she gets put through hell, of course, because that's what you do if you want to tell a story.
Yeah. If you're a character in comics, it's just you gotta rough her head, yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. But you know, she's kind of a brat. She's real sarcastic, you know, but she's good at her job, and you know, she's a classic action hero in that sense. But then, you know, but she's also becoming a werewolf, and you know, what do you do with that?
Yeah.
And so I think that there's that's one of the reasons that the story works, is that there's a strong central main character, but then I'm trying to make sure that I develop all the other cast. Her partner Mike, for instance, who's your classic super normal. He's this, you know, he's a cop, and he used to be a special forces dude, and he trained kung fu in China, and like he's got like this mysterious past. And you don't know exactly what exactly does he know, what has he done. And so in my new story, we're going to learn a lot more about him. Cool. I only hinted at it more in the first series, but now we get to explore him some more.
Wow, I'm like really excited to read this right now. That's really cool. And so how can someone go about finding your work apart from online? Like, say if you got someone who's like just a fan of the comic book and wants to hold it in their hands, where can they find it?
Well, if you're in the Boston area, actually, a number of comic shops carry it. Million Year Picnic has had it. Hub Comics, I believe, has it. Kamikaze in Davis Square has it. I need to get some back in with New England Comics. I think they sold out. Oh, wow. Harrison's up in Salem has it. So it's around locally. If you can't find it in the store, you can go to my site, paradigmshiftmanga.com. You can buy it from me direct. I'd be happy to sign and draw in it for you and everything. So it's kind of the package deal. That's
nice. Get like your own personalized vibe of this.
Absolutely. I you know, if you buy the whole set, then I draw a girl, a boy, and a werewolf. You know, it's great.
Cool. All right. Well, now I'm just gonna wrap up here. So here again, Paradigm Shift. You can find it on your website.
Yeah. Paradigmshiftmanga.com.
Cool. Awesome. Well, hey, Dirk, thank you so much for coming on the show, man. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so you can find Dirk's work on his website. And if you're an artist and you want to come on the show, you can just come on the website and drop us your name, and we'd love to have you on the show. And thanks for watching. Take care, guys.
Thanks.